turn it over to JR with our insiders.
It is time now to bring in our State House insiders. Antoine Seawright, our Democratic strategist, Dave Wilson, our Republican strategist. Looking back a couple of days now to the primary in South Carolina, once again, voter turnout an issue for some out there.
Look, I think when it's all said and done, we know that it will be less than 15% turnout. I think when it's all said and done, we know that less than 15% of the people are going to decide what the future of South Carolina politics look like at the local level. I think that's depressing. It's frustrating, particularly for those of us who live and breathe this stuff. But at the end of the day, voters decide who and what they want their politicians to be and what they want them to work on. The primary is the first step in that process.
And so by the end, we get to the end of the entire primary process, there will be some runoff races. And those races are going to be happening in about a week and a half from now. And so those races, when that is all said and done, half of the state legislature is already going to be basically sat for this coming session, which means that the rest of the races are going to be the ones that are going to be handled in the general election. And most of those are pretty much either solid Republican or solid Democrat.
And this is the first time in our state's history that by law we've had official early voting. And so when you look at the early voting numbers statewide, I think that's a strong indication that we're experiencing voter fatigue, voter frustration, voter anger, voter confusion. But the way we express ourselves in a democracy is by showing up at the ballot box, not choosing the couch as our choice.
Well, let's talk about what's going to be happening here next week now, as lawmakers will be back once again to deal, I'm guessing, with the budget. That's the biggest issue on the agenda, right?
The budget is the biggest item the state legislature has to deal with every single year. We're somewhere between $13–15 billion. That is everything from education to the funding of our health programs to law enforcement and everything that's in between. So budget conferees, 3 members of the House and 3 members of the Senate, have been working together over the last 2 weeks to basically say, okay, we've got the House version of the budget and the Senate version of the budget. Where do we line up? What do we agree with? This becomes the final budget. And so the House and Senate are going to be coming back next Tuesday, and they're going to be voting then on the budget. It will then go to the governor's desk, where most likely he's going to use his veto pen and at least veto a few items that are going to be in the budget this year.
When you have a budget north of $10 billion, like the budget we have, and when you're coming out of a fresh primary elections, look for primary politics and now general election politics to go into what the budgetary debate looks like, and essentially what the governor decides to veto and not veto. I think that's going to be a strong indication of what the final outcome of our state budget would look like.
Right. Here's a question, though. It seems like we do this every year with lawmakers. How come they've got to come back to deal with the budget and they can't get it done by the end of the regular session?
So because a few years ago we shortened the legislative, keep in mind, the legislative session used to go, back in the day, used to go to October. And so it then moved to June. And a few years ago, we moved the legislative session back to May. So they're here from basically the second Tuesday in January to the third Thursday in May, or second Thursday. And in that shortened time period, they're having to deal with a lot of different things. They eventually have to take up the budget, and that was normally something that would happen in the May to June time frame when we had a longer legislative session. Now it's shorter, so they have to come back for that.
But in reality, the reason they have to come back because you have a House and a Senate with 2 different political parties with 2 different agendas. And so in that case, most of the days, my head and my heart do not agree. So imagine a Democratic House and Senate and a Democratic House trying to figure out what they want to agree upon.
Right.
All right. 2 weeks from tonight is the first presidential debate. We mentioned it last week, but it's worth mentioning again. No studio audience. You still think that the former president may not show up?
There's a chance. I saw Sean Hannity teasing that idea again earlier this week. We've seen a number of guests on conservative talk show programs teasing the idea that he may not or he should not. We saw his daughter first tease that. And so I'm still waiting to see if he decides to show up. Look for Trump to do what Trump does, and that's twist the news cycle to make it about him.
Exactly. I mean, we're talking about Donald Trump showing up or not showing up for a debate. What better way to get viewership up is when the tally light turns on the camera, is the former president going to be standing there or not? And that's going to be a great question for turnout for him.
And the question is, when is he going to pick a vice president, and will they agree to a vice presidential debate? We have not seen that play out too. So there's a lot of waiting to see on the Trump side of what happens.
Well, and we also are going to be up against a bit of the calendar here because we've got the Republican National Convention that's going to be going on in July.
His sentencing.
The Democratic National Convention going on in August, probably somebody else's sentencing by that point in time. But the thing that you've got is those decisions, I don't know, who knows next. We're having fun tonight. It's Thursday night.
July 18th.
Okay.
Trump sentencing.
So in that particular case, we have this opportunity where all this stuff's going to be coming together, and that's the joy of politics around here.
All right, Dave, Antoine, guys, as always, thank you so very much for your time. For anything politics, as always, you can simply go to our website. That's WLTX.com.